Good afternoon, and sorry about that, and welcome everyone. It's terrific to be with you. I'm Ara Guzelimian. I'm the Provost and Dean of the Juilliard School, and so very grateful to be here and to learn from all that Sphinx offers. This session is actually meant to be largely an exchange and question and answer with all of you. We'll start with a quick round of our own, but I would strongly urge you to ask any questions you've always wanted to ask. And we have three terrific parents on the panel with children at different stages of this journey. We have a very experienced admissions director who's now the dean at a very major school. So we're very happy to be useful in any practical way. And I was asked to just remind you that Slido.com works. If you're shy about asking a question in person during the session, you go to Slido.com. You put in the access code SphinxConnect and make sure to choose the Venetian ballroom, which is this room, so that the question comes to this room. I did this successfully at a session this morning, so if I can do it, I assure you, you can do it. But if that daunts you, you can also just stand up and ask the question. This is a session just to talk in a way both about the practical and philosophical avenues towards entry and success in a music school setting in all of its elements. Both the steps in that journey and also steps once you're in that journey. And I'm so pleased and happy to introduce to you, and I'll begin to my right. Erika Locke Williams is a professor of music at Palm Beach State University, where she was a trombone and piano major, which is a pretty formidable combination. I got to ask you about that. But she was a trombone and piano major at Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. She's a professor of music at Palm Beach State and got her master's from Florida State with doctoral work at Nova Southeastern. She has been a music teacher in the schools. She has 3 children, all of whom are here. Her oldest child is Cameron Williams, who I'm proud to say was the winner of the junior Shark Tank, if you were here a year ago. I'm even prouder to say she's a second-year violist at the Juilliard School. Erika a minute ago said, thank goodness I'm done with this process for a while, but I'm about to remind you that with a daughter, music, who's 11 and a cellist, and a son, EJ, who's 7 and a violinist. We ain't done talking yet. Next to her is Leslie Clay, who is the parent of Ethan Clay, who's a talented high school senior cellist, undergoing this decision-making and audition process at this very moment, and we were talking about it. Leslie is from this area and said she's got a good number of family here, so greetings. But life has taken her to Louisiana, where she's regional manager of the Louisiana Public Health Institute and the Louisiana Campaign for Tobacco-Free Living. And when we did our preliminary phone call, Leslie said, wait, I'm the odd one out. I'm the one not music mom. And we all jumped and said, that's actually in some ways the most valuable perspective. So it's great to have you, Leslie. Next to her is Cioppa, who's the dean of the Colburn School in Los Angeles. And prior to that, she was the associate dean of admissions at Juilliard, where we very happily worked together for many years. And prior to that, she was the director of admissions at the Manhattan School. and she's an oboist who got her master's from Manhattan. Next to her is Lucinda Alley Landing, who's the executive director and parent educator of Hyde Park Suzuki Institute. Many of you who were here 2 years ago will have had the pleasure of hearing her daughter Itifayo, the cellist, who was the winner in the junior division. And Lucinda herself is a violinist with studies at Indiana and DePaul, and currently playing in the Illinois Philharmonic, the Chicago Sinfonietta, and the Sphinx Symphony. So a very warm welcome to all of you. I wanted to begin. And I would just add how lucky your kids are to have you as their moms from our conversations. I wanted to begin by 2 personal observations, and then I'm going to toss a general question to the panel, and then we're on to a Q&A, so you're up soon. One of the things, and I actually just had a version of this conversation with Leslie, don't ever select and rule anything out. Whether there's an obstacle in a path to a school that you say, oh, this will never work, or this obstacle will get in the way, or it's too big a reach, I'll never get in. I'm here to tell you from 13 years at the Juilliard School and familiarity with so many of our sister schools, that every year in admissions, the universal experience is students who say, I never thought I'd be here. So don't self-select out is a really critical piece of advice from the school standpoint. And the other thing I want to say is don't ever hesitate to ask, whatever the question is. Make personal contact with the school. Have your young musician make personal contact with the school. Because I'm a big believer in the quality of response they receive actually tells you about the school. You know, if you feel like you're hitting a wall in contact with a school, then that's a piece of information, right? And also, even though sometimes it's painful, don't be shy about articulating obstacles. There was a very talented young musician that I met here a couple of years ago, and I think he's thriving and doing very well. And I said, why did you not apply to Juilliard? And he said, we couldn't afford the application fees at more than one school. And I'm here to tell you that if you call up an admissions office and honestly explain the situation, most schools will waive the application fee. If, you know, once they understand the reality of your situation. And I give that very direct and rather painful example. So don't ever hesitate if you're seeing obstacles to ask. And if you meet obstacles, as I said, you've learned something, right, about that school. So my question to this wonderful panel is, just from each of your experiences, could you tell us an aha moment in your young musician's journey where something clarified, something that was particularly helpful, or helped open a door to a path that proved to be productive? And leave, I know you're a parent as well, but it's a little too early for, you can tell your own story, but also from the admissions perspective, if you can, and Lucinda, why don't we start with you and just work our way down?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I don't know that I have one aha moment. I have 3 children. My oldest is Ajima'a. She's a violist now. She was a violinist. Maybe that was an aha moment when she played the violin pretty much all her childhood. And at 16, we knew it was time to look for colleges, and we're not going to just look on violin. Let's let's try the viola. And viola wound up being her love. Like, she loves the viola more than the violin. That may have been an aha moment for her. And I have three. Ife Tayo, who actually is at Colburn. I'm sitting next to her dean, so I'm a little bit on the hot seat. And then I still have another 11-year-old to go. So I think they all have their own aha moments.
So my aha moment, hello everyone. It's so nice to see some familiar faces in the audience. Always reminds me that we're never 6 degrees away from each other in the music world. We're often like 2 degrees away. I probably know somebody who knows everybody in this room. My aha moment was very much a gift from someone else. I was a teenage oboe player. My father had recently lost his job. And my teacher at the time, who, don't laugh, was a bassoonist, because that was the closest my parents could get to finding me an oboe teacher, said, you need to study with somebody else. And I'm going to take you to a member of our local orchestra, and you're going to play for her and see if she'll take you as a student. And after I had a great lesson, I was terrified out of my mind. The teacher, my old teacher, said in front of me, this is the way I remember it, you know, her dad just lost his job. And so can you tell us how much you charge? Because this is going to be an issue. And she said, I would rather teach a talented student who's going to work hard for free than teach someone who is not interested. And that teacher taught me for 4 years without ever charging me a dime. Wow. And that was my aha. Maybe not just about playing the oboe, because I'm no longer an oboe player, but that was an aha moment of the network that you need around you and just the generosity of spirit that you need to have around you to make some of these things possible.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to see so many people in the room, because it's really important to me, because I got here because one of my aha moments is sitting right beside me. Hi, Erika. So I have several aha moments that I can share very quickly. The first aha moment was when my son was a freshman and he was placed in the junior orchestra for middle school, and he didn't quit. And not only did he not quit, he started practicing more and more and more. And it showed me that he was willing to invest in himself, so I said, okay, well, I'll start investing in him. And that's how we got to where we are. So that's the first aha moment. The second aha moment was when I was able to connect with, there's a woman in the audience, Jaylan Brown. We're very good friends. And I connected with her because she was with Mississippi Youth Symphony Orchestra. And I would reach out to her and I said, okay, I need to get some things happening with Ethan. And she was like, okay, I'm doing this, this, and this. So she shared information with me. And then my third aha moment was when I was connected with Erika, because I started posting Ethan's videos online. And our sorority sisters connected me with Erika. Erika was gracious and shared so much information, where Ethan started to go for summers and things of that nature. So I've had several aha moments because I was totally unfamiliar with this process. And for me, it's like having a student athlete, because it's a marathon. You're constantly moving. It's like having that weekend basketball program that everyone has their child in. That's what being a cellist is for me. I have to be in 5 different places, even though he's at the age to drive, because he's got quartet practice, he's got cello, he also plays tuba in the band, he's in the jazz band, and he has to do that because there's no orchestra at his school. So it's a lot. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I guess I have a few aha moments as well. Surprisingly, coming from a family of musicians and even playing the violin when I was little, as well as other instruments, I think one of the first aha moments was when my daughter on viola, that's Cameron, when she got to a certain level and we were told by 2 people, 2 adjudicators independently, that she was going to need a new instrument. And it was like, okay. And as she was looking for instruments and coordinating with her private teacher, you know, we're getting these 5-figure, 6-figure numbers as far as the cost. And although I'm a musician myself, just the thought of spending a car on an instrument, you know, and my husband who teaches science, who's like, we have a mortgage and other kids and, you know, all of that. So, and thankful for my mother, who's also a musician, and Cameron's Nana, who stepped up and purchased the instrument that she has today. It started to put some things in perspective with regards to the path that she wanted to take with strings. And thankfully, you know, we raised a child that thought about others. So in addition to her path, which has led her now to Juilliard, she also thought about bringing others along. And, you know, we're very big on paying it forward, which led to her 501c3 foundation, Cabernet Strings, which she actually started when she was 14. And even piqued her interest about making instruments. She's made a couple of instruments. She's studied over in Cremona, Italy, and other places. And so I think that was like the biggest aha moment. The cost and the accessibility, especially for our Black and brown children, and paying it forward. And we continue to do so.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment how instructive in some ways what Leslie said which was she just started asking questions of people. You know, I mean, this networking thing, yes, some young musicians start out in a perfectly formed groove of, you know, sort of the right teacher and the right music festivals and the right ties and everything else. But I think the groove, if you feel outside of that, can be daunting, and it just begins with the first question. And I think most people in the musical profession don't lose sight of their own beginnings and what the turning points were. And I would say the batting average of people responding more generously than not when asked, what do I do in this situation? Or, you know, in the case of what Erika was talking about, what solutions are there to being limited by an instrument? I think the thread of asking questions, and I would say among the many strengths that Sphinx has is that it's an extraordinary network itself. And so if you don't know where to begin or find an answer to a question, I would call up Afa or Abby or Andre or somebody at Sphinx and say, where do I go with this? And I mean, I guarantee you 100% answer and a link to that one. So we're going to be true to our words. We're going to start with questions, and would love to hear from all of you. And we can also rely, oh, there you are, yes. We're going to get a mic to you so everybody can hear you.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a really helpful panel for us parents and young students. One question I have is well, we're fortunate to be part of the Sphinx family, and there's opportunities to borrow instruments. We find the purchasing of the instrument, you know, really prohibitive, but at the level that's ideal. Have your sons and daughters borrowed instruments, and do they all own their instruments now? What is the advantage or disadvantage of going the borrowing route versus the purchasing route? Thank you.
My story is a little different than the other mamas on the panel. I'm from, my dad is a violinist, violist, and my sister and I both play, so I inherited my father's violin. So my daughters, okay, so I'm not giving them that violin. but I'm going to keep that one. But because I'm a music school owner, I have a relationship with vendors. So our students get a chance to borrow their instruments. And so after they're 18, honestly, you're kind of on your own for the people in my world to figure out instruments. But my students borrow instruments, very high level, high quality instruments.
I'm going to give a shout out to someone who's in the audience who has thought about this a lot and actually started a foundation to loan string instruments to students because it is such a problem. And Matthew is right here, and he's based here in Detroit. He works with DSO, but he's had this foundation going now for 8 years to loan specifically string instruments out. And I just want to say what's wonderful, again, about being here and you asking that question is we just made a connection, right? Which Ara was just saying. Ask. Meet Matthew. He's right there.
I also know, are you handy with a mic, or can we loan you a mic? I'm going to surprise you, Anthony, by asking you the question as a teacher. This is Anthony Elliott, very distinguished and wonderful cello teacher, just recently retired from the University of Michigan. What do you do when a student comes to you and is limited by their instrument? What are the options?
It really makes such a huge difference. I can recall when I was growing up, I was playing on an instrument that was made by the wonderful company known as K, if you ever remember the K. They were made of plywood, sort of multi-layer plywood. And I remember my teacher trying to get me to do certain things and not being able to do them. And then I got a chance to have a real cello and that was not made of plywood, and the difference was so enormous I couldn't even believe it. And there are some dealers who will really work with parents to try to get the best possible deal and the best possible sort of long-term arrangements. I think of, for example, I will get nothing for saying this, believe me, but the Lee shop in Chicago, William Harris Lee, is one of these people. Bill will work with you, and he will try to give you the best possible thing for your student. And there are others who also will bend over backwards if you work with them and tell them, look, this is what I have. Can I buy this over time? There are a number of people that are going to be willing to do that. So it's worth investigating and worth talking with the dealers about it.
And bravo, Sophia, for Sophia Ayers, who played at the juniors today, who's sitting next to her mom.
Hi, for the people not sitting next to Matthew, what is his foundation? And do they help students
I think we
locally
should
or
get
nationally?
Matthew a microphone.
I'm actually really loud. You guys can hear me, right?
There's a mic coming your way.
All right. Hi, my name is Matthew Way. Pleasure to meet all of you. I started working with the Double Stop Foundation in 2014, and the website is doublestopfoundation.org. In fact, my colleague, the Associate Principal Concertmaster of the New York Philharmonic, Michelle Kim, was the one who founded this organization. I know she, as a young child, very similar to myself, had a lot of trouble identifying, finding an instrument that would be strong enough so that she would be able to actually really perform. And to your sentiment, I completely agree. Having an instrument of quality that's high enough for you to not just be able to play, but to be able to say something on your instrument is of the highest, most important aspect of what you do. Your instrument is your voice. Just like a singer, when they sing, the bow and the instrument itself will help create and change your entire life. And I think that's what we discovered. I say we, Michelle and myself, when we had those opportunities given to us. And so that's why we do what we do. And through that process, we've held annual competitions through the organization. And in fact, what I discovered personally was that a lot of aspiring professionals like all of us in this room, many of us, we get to the conservatory level, or we're in high school, and we lose our opportunity at 18, and now we're at the conservatory level. And luckily, many conservatories are able to help because they have instrument collections. But what happens when you get out of that moment? And so for the Double Stop Foundation, for us, it was important to help provide for those aspiring professionals who were no longer students in school. And so there is an age range of folks who are perhaps a bit older than some of us in here, from that 24 to 27, even up to 30 range, where you've done all the training that you can, and for whatever reason, you haven't landed that job, and now you don't have an instrument. And so we've really tried to support that gap through the foundation as well. Not to say that anyone here under the age of 18 shouldn't apply, but the focus has been between the ages of 18 and 27, and that was something that I discovered personally as we developed this work through the foundation.
Thank you. Just one observation, and see, it's a dangerous thing sitting in this audience because I can see you, and next to Anthony is Pamela Frank. And I want to ask both of you, and you can answer by nodding. Most discerning teachers can tell if a talented student is being limited by a substandard instrument. Yeah, I mean, you know, lots of quick nods around the room. So it's not, you know, it's not an insurmountable obstacle because, you know, talent will out over the instrument, and the instrument can be solved through all of these various means. But thank you, really good and important conversation. Yes?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So we all know that this path to music is a very difficult one and is often very expensive. Have either or either of you, any of you, ever worried about your musician making a career of this? You know, I have two students. One has taken what I consider the more traditional path, which, you know, I can support a STEM student all day long. But music, for someone who is not a musician as well, it was very new for me. So I had to really step outside of my comfort zone to help my musician. But, you know, I look at the numbers, and that number, 1.5% keeps coming back to me. It's the number of black musicians who are in American orchestras. And I worry. I worry about her path some days. So I wonder all the effort and all the money that we put into helping them to get where they are or going to be. Do you ever worry that they're going to be all that they can be?
Yeah, who wants to go first? So yes, I worry. I worry. I'm a violinist, and my mom, I don't think she can tell you still what I do for a living. So my mom's an RN, and it took her a long time to say, my daughter's a violinist. When I started teaching, she could say, oh, she's a teacher, because that makes more sense. But as a violinist, my mother didn't even really understand how I made a living. I tried to go the orchestral route. I spent several years auditioning, and then I discovered local and regional orchestras and got in, and then I started teaching. So there are so many paths that you can choose. Yes, you have to have an entrepreneurial spirit as a musician. So Sphinx obviously has done so much work in trying to move that lever to more than 1.8%, I think is where it is right now. That's a big difference, 1.5 to 1.8. I don't know how they came up with that number. But in the meantime, until that gauge moves a little bit, you simply have to be an entrepreneur. There is, to my knowledge, no place that you take your undergraduate music degree and you go and be a musician for, $500,000. To my knowledge, that doesn't exist. So let me know if you find out. So you do have to forge your own path as a grown-up.
Yes, and I definitely agree. Even, again, both of my parents were musicians and music educators, and of my siblings, I'm the only one to take music on as a profession. My brother's an attorney, have a sister that's a paralegal and an older brother that was a teacher. And just even with my parents, not only were they performing, but they were also teaching and wearing different hats. And so that's the notion, that's what I've drilled in my own children. If you want to take this path of music, you can make a decent living. You're going to have to wear several hats, but you can make a decent living. And there was just no way I could force my daughter to go into a field that she didn't want to go to. Her passion is music, and so it's my duty to help foster that. But I also put into my teaching to her is where you don't see something available to you, then what do? You create your own opportunity. And she's young enough to where, folks been doing it for years, decades, centuries. You fail, you're young enough to pick up and start another one, start something else. So as long as as long as they go with the mindset of you might not do just one thing, then I think the sky's the limit.
Well, that's very interesting that you should bring that up. When Ethan said he wanted to be a musician 2 years ago, my husband was like, I want my doctor. And I was like, I don't think you're going to get your doctor. Or maybe you'll get your doctor and your musician, but he wants to do music. We need to support him with that. And I think it's very important to do what you're passionate about. I strongly believe what these two moms have said about entrepreneurship. He knows that he has a mentor in the conductor at Baton Rouge Magnet High School. He does performances around the city. He's also an African-American male, and he does performances around the cities. He conducts the orchestra at the school. He wears many hats, just like these two moms have talked about, with the many hats that you have to wear in order to make this successful. So we've had that talk with Ethan, and even though that's not where we come from, the parents who are in the room, you've done such a great job to get your children to SphinxConnect. This is where I was told I had to come if this is what he needs to do, because he needs to meet people. He needs to ask the questions. I need to ask the questions. So as long as you're doing this, and you know people who can help you out of the woods and help your child out of the woods, I think you're on the right path and you'll be fine.
I just also want to add, I'm an eternal optimist, which right at the moment is being sorely tested every time I look at headlines, but still sticking with it. And the statistic you quoted cannot stand. And I think in large part through the effort of Sphinx and other initiatives, but primarily through the leadership of Sphinx, the awareness is growing that it cannot stand. So I just want to point out two moments of progress. And I think it's actually essential for the field. It's not some, do-good mission. I think it's actually essential for the field. I was telling a young conductor I was speaking with earlier today, the Los Angeles Philharmonic just announced their 2021 season, this coming season. And it's my prejudice, but the LA Phil has been at the vanguard of a lot of really forward-thinking initiatives in the orchestra fields and does participate in the Fellows program. They've committed half their season to appearances by guest artists or composers of color and women. So, and take a look. Go on their website, and I'm sure the season announcement is there. I saw the press release, and I thought, holy cannoli, where, there is tangible progress suddenly. So I just hold tight to things like that and say the 1.5 or the 1.8 just gotta move. And so, yes. Was that a stretch?
No, I was raising my hand.
Let's get you a mic.
So I've been overseeing programs that help develop young musicians of color. And one of my observations is that without me even trying, when families and communities really stepped up and became these volunteers, that suddenly exponentially made a difference in the success of the program, the success of the students. And so what I'm trying to think about right now is how to do that strategically, how to build and create armies of community volunteers and family volunteers that help support aspiring musicians where that is an undervalued choice. And just being deliberate like that. I just wonder if you guys have any thoughts about that.
I have lots of thoughts about that because that is my passion, and that is what I do as a parent educator. So the reason why we've had so much success sending students to Sphinx, not just my own personal children, but my students, is the involvement of the parent and the community. So we would not have done what we've been able to do without the community. And once you educate the parent, then the community comes on. Our experience has everything I could not have done this by myself, even as a violinist. So my family, my parents, grandparents, everybody stepped in to help. So it starts with the parent education, is what I think.
And my experience, and again, this goes along with paying it forward, because it was a learning experience for me, for all of us parents who are out there who, you know, a lot of us are college educated and we've gone to universities and so forth. Even 10 years ago, the process is totally different, you know, from grade point averages to testing, the whole and then of course the audition process is totally different than what it was even 10 years ago. So letting, you know, or building a network of parents and other educators, administrators to help not only the child, but also the parent is very important with this evolving process. And the competitiveness, I mean, we have to teach these kids to fight. You know, it's, when I talk to other parents and, you know, I have someone say, oh, my child has a 4.8 HPA and 1,600 on SAT, and I'm like, okay, everybody does. What else you got? Give me more, give me more. And that's just the world that we're in today. You know, that whole college scandal, of course I wouldn't do that, but that's where people are. That's where we are now. And so we have to teach our kids and build a network, a family of supporters to get them through that process. Because I can tell you, my house, when we were dealing with auditions and applications, my husband's out there, it was very interesting in our house. You know, my husband, I say, you take care of the financial aid, scholarship applications, I'll take care of the admissions. And then turn around, he missed a deadline for a scholarship. You know, so, I mean, we have to build up this whole network, you know, of support and stick it out. Stick it out with these kids all the way, even through the process. My daughter tell you now, I still look for scholarships now. And she's in her second year, I'm still looking. And you'll be amazed at the money that's out there for, you know, for our students. You know, I just told a parent the other day, do you realize the Congressional Black Caucus, the spouses have a scholarship that she won? You know, so I mean, you have to just build a whole network to help these kids and stick it out with them.
And I just wanted to say, when you get on a panel like this with these moms and the kind of communities that you build, I have now been asked to come to the Kids Orchestra in Baton Rouge and talk to those parents. So there's a whole paying it forward type of thing. I don't necessarily have the same kind of parent networks because I'm in Baton Rouge where this is not necessarily a big thing yet, but it can be a large thing. So because of what I've experienced here and going to Jackson, Mississippi, Chicago, and Florida, and reaching out to people over social media, that whole community, even though it's not immediate, it's still like a community, like a family, including my family. And right now, my husband doesn't even work in Baton Rouge. He's never home. So I've had to set up the 10 auditions myself for our son and get him to all of these things. So it's a complicated process that can be very stressful, but as long as you can get on the phone or call one of these moms or call somebody in your community, and it doesn't have to be right there. It can be a Facebook Messenger away. So, yeah.
I've been negligent of Slido, so let me turn to our unseen questioners.
Yeah, no problem. And so again, too, just to submit your questions, just go to slido.com, SphinxConnect, and we're in the Venetian room. But the first question is, how do we build armies of family and community?
Oh, it got covered. Terrific. Then over to you. That question was covered in person, so, yep. And Annie, I think it's over. And we'll turn back.
Hello. My name is Jashanti Henry. I'm a first-year flute player at the Eastman School of Music. I just have a question about dealing with my fear after graduation on what I'm going to do and where my music is going to take me. After seeing so little, music positions for flute players actually, and seeing, even, orchestras going bankrupt, how do I stay motivated and just say, everything's going to be all right after I graduate in 23?
Sure.
That's a great question. And I want to note that you answered it only by addressing how orchestras are doing. I think this was something that came up in a panel earlier today. I think one of the more interesting statistics that does not get talked about is that there are more jobs in music than there have ever been before. They're not in orchestras. There are fields of music that exist now that didn't exist 40 years ago because the entrepreneurial spirit is finding out what they care about, what they love, where the spaces are that need to be filled, and they're filling them. I mean, one of the things that I'm really fascinated about, you said you're a flute player, but composers now, this idea of only being a composer for concert music. You can have an incredibly, really well-paying career writing music for video games. How long ago? That's a brand new field, people. That didn't exist. Well, Pac-Man. In my time. In my time. I don't think that counts. So what I would say to you is don't be fooled by the statistic. You're going to wear many hats. You're going to have perhaps a whole portfolio of things that you can do. But the fact that you don't end up in an orchestra, if that is not the path that you end up on, you can and will have a beautiful, wonderful, fulfilling, significant, important, wonderful life in music. Anyway.
I agree. I'd also like to address your question. So if your heart is in orchestral music, of course you can play in an orchestra. There's so many different orchestras everywhere. Or you can start your own orchestra. I play with Chicago Sinfonietta, and Dr. Freeman started it in, I think, 1985, and he started from scratch. Now, the question is, how much money are you going to make? And that's up to you as a business person. I'm a violinist, but I started a music school and discovered I was a business person. So if you want to play your instrument, and your age group is going to, like she said, you guys are going to create job titles that we don't know anything about. And you have the benefit of social media that people 10 years ago didn't have. So do your thing. It'll come to you.
And can I add two thoughts? One is that fortunately there's a lot more awareness among conservatories about the entrepreneurial spirit, and many of them, and I think including Eastman, are, so take advantage of every possible entrepreneurial or business of music course. And the other thing I would add is when you're in school is a safe time to try ventures. So if you want to create a chamber music series of your own, you're in school, you're in a place with lots of resources and network. Do it, because I was thinking when you said you're a flutist, Damari McGill, who's now, who when he was at the San Diego Symphony, started a series called The Art of Elan, which was chamber concerts in atypical settings and galleries to attract a non-traditional classical audience. To Damari's huge credit, as he's moved to various orchestras and he's now in the Seattle Symphony, that series continues in San Diego without him and continues to thrive. So I'd say if you're tempted to do anything, give it a try while you're in school, because you're not going to fall very far. Yes. And then we'll do one last slide where the clock is ticking.
So my name is Malika Fair. I am the proud aunt of Ethan Clay. My sister is on the panel, Leslie Clay. So I've been fascinated by his application process to college. It's not similar to anything I'm familiar with, and so I cannot give him any advice. So my question to the panel is, what are music schools looking for in an applicant outside of how well you can perform? When I was applying, it was leadership abilities, it was well-roundedness. What are music schools looking for in an applicant?
The question was, what are music schools looking for in the 2 minutes we have? I'm happy to have a much longer conversation. I think a broader perspective, obviously playing well is the gate point, but you won't be shocked to learn that a fair number of kids play well in auditions. And then beyond that, what that student brings to the school, and I'll just speak from my own experience, we read essays, we read high school transcripts, we read the recommendations. And if it's a toss-up between this student who plays well and this student plays well, and it's not has climbed the Himalayas and is a grandmaster at chess and all the usual nonsense, so much as what does this person bring to the life of this community, and so in filling out applications and particularly essays, I'd say don't shy away from, presenting who you are, rather than this kind of catalog of unbelievable accomplishments. Because I think the admissions, and Lee has had much more experience than I have now at 3 schools, I think the admissions process has become much more nuanced in that way.
I think that I'm not going to help answer the question, because I'm going to say that every school is going to do it differently. And some schools are going to weigh more on the audition process. Some schools are going to have an interview. Some schools are going to care about your GPA. If you're applying to a music school at a university system, they're going to also want you to take SATs. It literally varies from every school. If you applied to 12, I guarantee you it's actually different at each of those 12 schools. And then there's that wonderful opaque thing that is impossible to see from that side, which is, what does the school want and need in that given year? Do we have 1 flute opening? That's really tough, right? Or do we have 15? Yay, bonus year. But I think the most key thing that I would say is, there will be something that will resonate, there should resonate for your student, that the school is right for your student. I think that's one of the most important things, because if we're looking for 12 different things, it's because we're 12 different schools, and which one is the best fit? And that's really one of the hardest parts of the process, is figuring out, because I'm going to hope that he's going to choose from 10, and if he gets to choose from 10, then which one is the right one?
That's got to be a whole other session. We're sadly at the end of our time, and I'm going to ask Lee, because I neglected to bring a copy of this book. There's a wonderful book that our colleagues from Colburn and Juilliard have collaborated on, and it's not about getting in. Do you recall the...
It might be really simple, like a guide to college admissions.
For music.
For music.
And we'll work with Sphinx to get it up on a website. But there is this wonderful book that was recently published that's utterly nuts and bolts answers to every step of the way. How do I fill out a financial aid application? What are schools looking for? And it's the most thorough of its sort that even if you're starting with absolutely zero knowledge of this process, it walks and talks you through it, and it has real life advice from both faculty and students who've gone through the process. So I apologize for being so vague, but we'll get online and get it posted. Thank you so much, everyone. It's a pleasure to be in your company, and thank you especially to these extraordinary parents on the panel.